Welcome to Leaders in Conversation. I'm Annie Townend, podcast host and partner to executives, leaders and their teams. I'm also co-founder of Collaboration Equation and of the podcast Finding Your Collaborative Edge with Lucy Kidd. My guest today on Leaders in Conversation is Yasmin O'Neal, Senior Director for Global Brand DECIEM. DECIEM is best known for its leading brand, The Ordinary. The title of our conversation is Can You Love Your Team and Love to Win? Leaders in Conversation is the podcast in which leaders weave together the threads of their life and leadership stories, the people, places and experiences that have shaped them, their values, beliefs, passion and purpose to encourage and inspire you to be even more confident and courageous in your leadership. If you're not already, please do subscribe to the podcast, review and share it. Thank you. I had the joy of meeting Yasmin on the Marketing Leaders Programme in 2025. I loved her commitment to participate wholeheartedly in the programme, to learn, and how she supported and challenged not only her own thinking, but also others' thinking. And I'm truly excited for her to share her story and be in conversation with her today. In our conversation, Yasmin offers valuable insights into how you can love your team and you can win, kindness versus niceness, being curious, and how we all have an impact. Welcome, Yasmin.
Thank you, Annie. I'm very excited to be here.
You inspired me on the Marketing Leaders Programme by your thinking, your questioning, your curiosity, and your support and challenge of others on the programme. And one of the things, as you know about the Marketing Leaders Programme, that it is about the people, the community, the relationships that people co-create with each other, as well as listening to leaders, CMOs, CEOs sharing their stories. And to have you as a guest on Leaders in Conversation today, sharing your story is a real privilege. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Annie. Pleasure to be here.
I'd love to start by asking you about your story, in particular, the people, the places and experiences that have shaped you and your values and beliefs, passion and purpose.
Yeah, so the biggest impacts in my life have definitely been my parents. I'm mixed race, but I think what's interesting about my parents who come from very different cultures is that they're both children of immigrants. And I think when you are an immigrant, you definitely feel like you need to earn your place in society. And you have this kind of like very hard work ethic. And I would say it's in a good way and a bad way, because the good part of that is I have this incredible work ethic and I want to contribute to society and I want to make sure I'm very ambitious, which I've come to realize is a good thing. And I don't want to apologize for being ambitious anymore. But on the other side, it definitely put a lot of pressure on myself.
You've talked about your work ethic and the hard work and doing well and the expectation. And I can imagine that can come with a cost sometimes to you and to have done so.
Yeah, and I think when you have a very hard work ethic and you put a lot of pressure on yourself and you're trying to prove everyone wrong all the time, it is a relentless strain on you. And a couple of years ago, I had a huge, a crisis. It was a health crisis. I'd struggled a lot with breast cancer throughout the years. And then I got the diagnosis that I had thyroid cancer and I had half my thyroid removed. But it was at this moment, I remember I was seeing all these doctors and I was thinking, what is wrong with me? Why do I have these tumors or this cancer or keep having operations? And I just realized that I hadn't been treating my body very well. I'd been putting all this pressure on my mind, giving everything to work, driving towards a success. And it took that big health crisis for me to realize that actually life isn't about being successful at work or proving to society that you're worth a place in it. Life is actually about being happy. And I think what's helped me is focusing more on happiness has actually made me more successful, funnily enough. And I know Probably other people have a similar story. I've heard health crises turning people's lives around, having something, being on the brink of very poor health, maybe prioritize correctly, focus on happiness, focus on my team's happiness even more, and maybe better at what I do, more efficient, more optimized, more space for thinking, for workshopping, for being curious, all these things that I deeply believe in. Yeah, I'm actually very thankful that I went through all of that in the end.
I'm glad you've come through that and that you found happiness and that you've made it a priority. And I'm reminded of one of our speakers on the Marketing Leaders Programme last year in 2025, when she spoke about her purpose was to lead with joy, and how inspiring we all found that and resonated with it, and the power and simplicity of you leading with happiness and how important that is.
I found that so inspiring to hear someone very senior, very successful, doing great things, but leading, making joy her purpose at work. And one thing I think she talked about was intention versus impact. And I now have a little post-it note on my laptop that says intention versus impact. And I had to stop myself in some meetings and think, okay, what's my intention going into this? And how do I make sure I have the desired impact? And if my intention is really, I want to create happiness, even when I'm giving maybe a bit of tough feedback or having to say no to something or deliver bad news, I can still do it in a way that doesn't dishearten the team or demotivate them and so on.
It's so important, isn't it, to have that intention and to set our intentions, especially ahead perhaps of a difficult conversation or a challenging meeting. I hope that your intention for our conversation today was one of happiness, because you do bring happiness in your leadership. How can you love your team and win at the same time? So tell me more about how we can do that if our intention is to bring love into our life and work and at the same time win.
I'm such a huge believer of this, that you can love your team and actually it will make it a more efficient, better, high performance team. And we were talking about what does leadership mean? And we basically all agreed that leadership is generating results through others. If I can coach and nurture a team that can generate better and more results, then that's going to be a win-win for everyone, especially if I can do it with love and creating them happy, making them feel safe and good at work. I have phrases that I like to fall back on so that the team knows them. And one of the phrases that we love is high love, high expectations. And whenever anyone joins my team, I say the way I lead is high love, high expectation. I will give you all the opportunities I can. I will look after you if I feel that something is going on in your personal life. I will really love you as best as I can. And I mean that in that deep sense. But I also have very high expectations. I'm expecting you to deliver high quality work, excellent work, great strategic thinking, pushing us into the future. And I think a really good example of this is there was a new person that joined my team a couple of months ago. And at DECIEM, we're a bit entrepreneurial. We sometimes do things that aren't in our job description. And we're struggling over a bit of copy. And I said to her, why don't you just write that copy, give it a go, think about what you want to write, and then share it with me. And she said, oh no, Yasmin, I don't write copy. I can't write copy. And I said, I think you can write copy. I believe that you can. So she went away, she wrote that piece of copy, which was good. But then a week later, we had another bit of copy and she just proactively said, by the way, I've had a crack at writing this copy myself. And it was brilliant. And I just celebrated her so much. I was like, this is amazing. Like, you could be a copywriter. Look what. And she was so proud of herself. She'd unlocked this whole new skill, this belief in herself. And that gives me a thrill. Like, that makes me feel joy. That makes me feel fulfilled. And I think repeating that time and time again is what makes the difference.
I love that. And to think about the things that you say you can't do and have a go at doing them. I think it's so exciting to go against ourselves sometimes. And ahead of our conversation today, I was reflecting on having been sent a really beautiful book, which is a guide to drawing, sketching. And I don't know that I would say of myself, I can't draw. I would probably say I don't draw. I think I probably can, but I might not make time for it to have a go. And I've got this book on the kitchen table and I'm looking at it, and it so chimes with everything I do, because it's about noticing what's in front of you. And I'm a big noticer. I pay attention to what's in front of me and around me, and drawing it with whatever comes to hand. And it's such a wonderful way of paying attention to something that is in the everyday, but giving it that bit of extra attention. And every Friday, I look after my 2-year-old grandson, and he's just got into drawing and being very expressive in the lines on the paper and the circles and the shapes. And while he was doing that, I got a piece of paper and started to sketch him. My first sketch. Later on in the day, I held it up to him and he recognised himself, which gave me such joy and encouraged me to have another go and to draw whatever is in front of me. And the first time it might be a little bit difficult. It will get easier.
I love that, Annie, about your grandson in the picture. I think the having a go is have belief in yourself as a given and have belief in your team as a given. One part of loving your team is knowing when to let someone go so that you protect the team culture. But I feel like believing as a given, just upfront, not asking for anything in return, just believing in them, can change the potential of that team dramatically.
I think you're setting the scene when people join your team with high love and high expectation, which is so motivating, that you really love the people in your team and around you, and you have high expectations of them. And that, I think, leads into our next theme, which is around kindness versus niceness, because you mentioned sometimes somebody may not be right for the team for whatever reason. And I think that kind of flows from it is kinder to have the conversation.
And part of being in my team is this thing that I adhere to, which is loving honesty. And probably one of my most unpopular opinions is that niceness is lethal and niceness is wasted when you're in internal work teams and in life, to be honest. I feel being nice is staying in your comfort zone and not being fair to people around you. And being kind is sometimes having to have a tough conversation because you actually care about your team's growth. I love my team too much to let them settle on being average. And that means that I love them so much that I think they can be excellent. But that also means that I'm going to have to give you feedback. And sometimes you're going to feel uncomfortable, and some people don't want that. But I think one person in my team who I saw a couple of weeks ago in Canada, she was saying sometimes when we sit in a review together, either it's brilliant and you give me lots of praise, etc., but sometimes it is uncomfortable. But I know I'm growing in those moments and I lean in. That's why it's about loving honesty, it's creating that love first. But it's also, if I'm giving you this tough feedback, which is hard for me to deliver, I could have taken the easier route and just not given it to you at all. But I care about you enough to give you this sort of, for you to leapfrog off and go forth into the next stage of being brilliant.
It's so important, that, isn't it? And that, for me, connects with safety, that niceness doesn't have me feel safe. I don't know where I stand with somebody if they are being nice. What I really appreciate, even though it can be tough, is when I know somebody really loves me and cares about me enough to give me the feedback. And the way I talk about it with leaders and their teams is when we give feedback, give it with love, give it with a commitment to that person's success. And also, I think, combining it with what you mentioned earlier around having the intention of happiness, that the person, as they leave that conversation, they feel happy. For me, I want people to leave the conversation feeling more confident. So they may feel uncomfortable with what we've discussed, but that they feel confident to do something with it, whatever that might be. And so my intention always to help people, and hence this podcast, it's about encouraging people to feel more confident and courageous in their lives and leadership, and to do that with kindness.
I love what you said there about the niceness. And Annie, we were talking about the fact that we are both people that communicate with clarity, you could say, or directly. I'm definitely a direct communicator. And it's funny because when I interact with people who are more ambiguous communicators, I feel very rattled by it. And I've had to train myself to know that not everyone is going to be a direct communicator, and I still need to manage that. But I see the value in my team, and I see how much they like knowing where they stand. End of year reviews are never a surprise to my team. They know where they stand because we've taught throughout the year. If they're doing brilliantly, they know they're doing brilliantly. If they have things to work on, they know they have things to work on. And knowing where you stand, especially in today's world where so much is uncertain. And that doesn't mean there's not uncertainty in the culture that we have. Like even within DECIEM, we have a lot of uncertainty built into the way we do business, which gives us an agile edge. But it's not uncertain in the relationships that I have. I think that's an important nuance.
I love that you've mentioned edge there, because it's something which Lucy Kidd and I in our work with Collaboration Equation is all about finding your collaborative edge. And we're very curious about the different edges. So I know I'll be sharing with her the agile edge as we explore different edges and where those edges are and how they can be creative constraints. We take the edge from thinking about permaculture, where there's more diversity at the edges. You get the different voices, the different experiences, which can feel uncomfortable. But if we feel safe and able to have the conversations, we can be more agile, we can be more successful in what we create, in what we do.
I agree with diverse thinking, diverse experiences. We often hire people in DECIEM that don't come from skincare and beauty backgrounds because we see ourselves as more than just a beauty company. The Ordinary is all about giving access, but we don't just give access to great quality skincare products. We give access to other things as well.
I so hope that in our conversation today, for listeners, that they will think about this and think about their own stories and sharing their stories and learning from each other.
Any listeners out there who are maybe at the start of their career, I'd want to just encourage them to not let anyone else define their existence or their ambition. I remember once I was at Procter & Gamble and my manager encouraged me to do interviews every year. So I did an interview for a huge brand and I got through to the last round. And the hiring manager asked me, what do you hope to be? What's your end goal if you join this company? And I said, I think I'd love to be CMO, Chief Marketing Officer. I want to aim for the top. And I didn't get the job. And when I got the feedback, he'd said, too ambitious. That really hurt me. But since 10 years later, I've realized that isn't the answer. And if someone doesn't recognize your worth, your ambition, your potential, then thank goodness I didn't go to that company because it wouldn't have been the right place for me.
I love your ambition, and I would encourage listeners to be ambitious. Be ambitious for yourself, be ambitious for others. And interestingly, I can remember getting feedback way back when in my 20s, where I was working for and at an occupational psychologist firm, and I had come out as ambitious, but not competitive enough. Exactly. You look puzzled. And I remember thinking, that's okay with me. I am ambitious and I want to own that. I want to do well. I want to do good work in the world. I want to do what I'm good at and get better at it. I'm ambitious to get better at what I do and to learn. And I'm okay with not being competitive. But it's so interesting that we remember, like you're remembering, the feedback that you got, that you didn't get that job because you were too ambitious. And I think the minute that we put words like too or not enough, immediately that sort of comparison or comparative narrative comes in. We are losing sight of who we are and why we're here.
Agreed. Yeah, I agree. It boxes us in a little bit, doesn't it?
Rather than bringing curiosity, which I know is really important to you, bringing curiosity and being able to tell me more about your ambition, tell me more about what it would mean for you to be the MO.
What's important to me is I want to hire people that are ambitious because I want to grow future leaders that then replace my role. So I now ask people in their interviews at the end, I say, what does success look like to you? If you retire at 60, 70 and, you've achieved everything you want to achieve. And the answers are so inspiring. I had someone the other day saying they want to start their own brand. And I was like, great, I love that. I want to have someone who's entrepreneurial on the team.
Because they bring that energy and focus. And without you asking that question, you may not have uncovered that ambition and that excitement and that desire. And knowing what our desire is and being able to talk about it, I think is so important. Bringing curiosity, which is something that you bring in everything that you do, and your love of learning. And it was something which I experienced being alongside you on the Marketing Leaders Programme, is your wonderful curiosity.
Yeah, I think one of my close friends, he once described me as, I say why, and then, but why is it like that? Because I don't think in this day and age we can just take no's for an answer. We need to know, okay, if it's a no, why? So there's like a curiosity in challenging the world around us and not accepting the way it's always been is the way it always has to be. That's always been with me. I inherited that from my parents, my mum especially. I've always had that sort of question everything. If we have this curiosity, we can access way more creativity. It gives us a bit more joy. And I think you're only going to learn more. You're only going to have a greater edge if you do that, to use that word again.
Curiosity, care, and courage are the three mindset and behaviours of collaboration equation. That bringing curiosity, care, and courage, that combination leads to collaborative edge. And without care, curiosity can sometimes be seen as intrusive. But with care, love, curiosity is welcomed. And courage, the wholeheartedness of courage and of encouraging, the courage to be personal, to share experience, to be wholehearted in being vulnerable, being present, speaking up.
Annie, they're my values to live by. I love them.
And mine.
Well, it's funny, isn't it? You can go into different places, have different corners of business culture, and I often find in positive working environments, it's the same values that underpin healthy cultures. And if I'm honest with myself, prior to my health crisis, I probably was a bit too focused on curiosity and courage. After having everything that I went through, I realized that the care, like you say, is the foundation, is the fundamental. And when you have the care, you can do the curiosity without it seeming too direct or too intrusive, to use your language. So I couldn't agree with that more.
Wonderful. Yasmin, as we come to the end of our conversation, is there anything else that in your preparation and reflection readying for our conversation that you would like to touch on?
When I was preparing for this podcast and thinking a lot about my leadership and the world right now, I was thinking how much the world does need love and unity. And we as leaders, we all have impact. And that's something I deeply believe, whether your impact is one person that you interact with across a month, or if it's 100 people, we all have impact. But leaders, we have a greater impact because by nature we have teams. I think if we all wove more love into that impact, it could have an exponential impact on the world, which needs the arms to be wrapped around it right now, and we need a bit more unity. So I would just say to think about that as we go across our days. And I know leaders have a lot to think about and a lot on our minds and a lot of pressure, but love is actually easy to give. You can do it in a second, and then you can have the rest of the meeting.
Thank you, Yasmin. Thank you for your love. Before I ask you about your 3 key encouragements to leaders, who is the person and what is the conversation that you're going to have with them following our conversation today?
Call my mum and say thank you, actually. Both my mum and dad, but probably especially my mum from this conversation. She has been such an inspiration to me. And I think often people doing roles like being a teacher, these roles which are so essential and very hardworking, are undervalued by society. And I think she's an incredible human being, so creative, so curious, so inquisitive, so joyful. And I can see as I'm talking to you how much I reference her. So yeah, I'm going to thank her, I think. Yeah, I'm going to thank her for everything.
Wonderful. Thank you, Yasmin. And your 3 key encouragements to leaders in summary are?
My 3 key encouragements are, leaders, we have a bigger sphere of influence, so let's use it for the good. I touched on that earlier. The second being, belief should be a given. Believe in your team, believe in that new person, let them prove you right instead of proving you wrong. And then the third one is loving honesty. So tell that person what they need to hear so they have an opportunity to improve. And don't shy away, but just do it with love in your heart and love as your intention. And I think all will be well.
Thank you, Yasmin. Thank you. For people who would like to connect with you and to find out more about you and maybe to have a conversation with you because they would love to bring more love into their leadership, how best for them to do that?
Best way is on LinkedIn. So Yasmin O'Neal is my profile. And I do check it, not every day, but probably once a week.
Wonderful. And to you, the listener, if you'd like to listen to other leaders in conversation with me, please go to my website, annietownend.com, to listen to Finding Your Collaborative Edge and to bringing more curiosity, care and courage in your life and leadership. Do go to our website, collaborationequation.com. A huge thank you to Schmogus Media for the wonderful production and marketing of the podcast, and to Louisa Penny from Penny Writing. To contact me, do email me on annie@annietownend.com, visit my website, subscribe to my newsletter, and please follow me on LinkedIn, Annie Townend. I look forward to connecting with you. Thank you for listening, and thank you, Yasmin, for your love.
Thank you for having me, Annie. Very much enjoyed it.